Hello, everyone, and welcome to the session. We're about to start the webinar. Great to have you over. I see a lot of you joining. Now we have about more than 100 people. So thanks for joining. We're about to start in a minute. My name is Thibault. I work at Rental Scale Up and as well as PriceLabs. And joining with us is Richie. Richie, I was just warming up the room. How are you?
Fantastic. Doing good, yeah. Doing good. Thank you so much.
Great. So as I was saying, we have more than 200 people already joining. So we're going to have just a few slides at some point to talk about trends that will go live using the tool. It's going to be interactive. And at the end of the session, we're going to have a Q&A. So that you have time to ask us questions, something's not clear, or really our goal is to make it super actionable for you today. Any thoughts or things to share? And by the way, I hope we have a great start of the year. It's also important. How about you, Richie? Any thoughts or anything to share before we get started?
No, let's get started.
All right. Also, I would like to thank Neha, who's organizing this event, and she kindly also has. I will start showing some slides, but beforehand, so we have a feel of the room here at the moment. We have a quick poll. If you can fill it up, so we can understand who about is in the room. So is the question how long presentation will be? So it's slides and demo, so we go live and it's going to be under 60 minutes and it is recorded. You'll get a link with the recording, but do attend because otherwise you can't get your questions. And Neha, thank you. I started exchanging the questions. So please answer the questions. Again, it will really enable us to tailor the experience for yourself. So you have to, I guess, go through different questions. Oh, that's the first question. Okay.
So like Thibault said, is getting recorded. So we'll definitely be sharing this recording.
All right. So for this poll, I think I'm just checking with Neha whether everybody has gone through the replies. Can we see the answer one way or another to get a feel of the room?
I think we can.
So yeah, perfect. Thank you. So first question was, are you a PriceLabs customer? 87% yes.
Thibault, you're sharing your screen, right?
Yeah, yes, I am.
Okay.
Right on it. Sorry about that.
No worries.
I just got the Q&A questions, which are very interesting, but in a way. Now, okay, can you guys all see my screen? Good. And so welcome to this Unlock 2023 growth, your growth potential thing. So our goal again, just as Richie said, is to be very actionable. What we'll do, we'll look at the big industry trends that are hitting our industry this year. And I'll cover that part. And thanks to Richie, we'll then look at how you can see how these trends are maybe affecting your local market. And then we'll see how these, let's say industry trends and these local trends are then affecting in turn your own listings performance, really. So we go like, for example, from big to small, so macro to micro. But first, a quick word of introduction, maybe who are we? And Richie, do you want to maybe introduce yourself for a few who don't know you?
Sure. If you've been on PriceLabs webinars before, you've probably heard my voice or seen me around. I'm one of the co-founders at PriceLabs. We have been doing this for 8 years, and really excited about doing this. Have done this for the last couple of years at the start of every year and end of every year as well. So really excited about that. We have lots of new features and products in store as well that we've made changes over the last year. So it'll be interesting to walk through those today and talk about how they can impact and how you can think about incorporating them as you talk about, as you look at what's happening in your market.
That's great. So my term, I'm Thibault. I'm the founder of Rental Scale Up. It's a short-term rental news website that now is proudly a part of PriceLabs, and I'm also the head of product marketing at PriceLabs. So to get started, so the idea here is to look at different trends and hypotheses about the market, And then the idea is like to share with you, what we're hearing about the market, what we're seeing. And as we all know, it's great to know what people are saying about, the overall, for example, short-term rental market or the overall US, the overall Europe. But what's going to be interesting for us today, we'll start from these big trends so you know what they are. And then Richie is going to show you how you can see whether it's also happening in your market, right? But first, let's start with talking about what people are saying. So for example, what we hear from different sources is that after the big boom in demand and revenues that we recorded in 2021 and 2022, 23, for example, in the US should actually still be a view of growth, but just not as fast as in the past, right? So instead of being above 20% year on year, the growth should be barely above 5%. That's the idea. So same thing, we hear that ADRs will stabilize as well, will be pretty flat. So again, that's what people say about overall, but as we know, what's it like in your own market? And we see this again with Richie. So just again, so you know, that's what people are hearing and saying. And still, when we write every week in the Rentals Club about the industry, when we analyze the market, we also want to look at other growth factors, right? Indeed, not everything is negative. And I'll talk a bit later about what's negative, but there's some positive too hitting our industry. And here are, for example, 3 different trends that we believe could be good for the overall industry, right? For example, since 2020, we know that demand in big cities has been low. What I mean is that whereas traditional vacation rental markets like seaside, coastal, mountain rebounded very fast, it was not the same in big cities. From Chicago to Paris, London to Bangkok, the demand was very, very low, and it has come back up, but slowly. So hopefully, what we see this year, we see a demand back in his destinations. Of course, the only caveat we put here, if these are cities where stronger regulation is now in place, of course, demand will be limited by the lack of supply. Another trend to note is that over the last 2 years, what we've seen is that people in the US, for example, have been traveling a lot within North America. Or people in Europe have been traveling a lot within Europe, right? Crossing boundaries, but within Europe. Since last summer, we've seen more and more, for example, Americans going to Europe. So hopefully with, for example, Asia reopening as a destination, as well as a source of travelers, China is reopening finally. We hope that if you're exposed to international travelers, you should also be getting a bit more of this. So that's also positive. And last thing I want to say is that despite all the talks of recession, we do still see that as an hypothesis that travel is still a need for a lot of people. That should sustain the thing. So that's the positive factors. Richie, on this so far, anything to add?
No, there's just one question. What does ADR stand for? ADR stands for average daily rate, right? What kind of a price you're getting for a booking?
Very good question. Yeah, thanks for sharing the question. Yeah. So I started with the positives. Let me start with the negatives a bit, because otherwise it's not not fun. It's also something to have in mind, right? 2 things we hear, for example, and here I'm going to turn towards Airbnb, right? At Rentals Club, we follow a lot what Airbnb is doing, not just because we're obsessed with Airbnb. It's just for 2 things. It's just because what Airbnb is doing, observing, is priming a lot how the media or people talking around you may see the world. So it's important. And second, it is one of the biggest sources for bookings for a lot of us who have businesses, right? So it is important to know what's happening. The first thing that we've seen on social media a lot since last summer, especially in the US, people complaining about the Airbnb bust, meaning that people have been saying, well, I'm getting fewer bookings at my listing. It's going down. And we've heard this. So again, it's going to be interesting with Richie to see whether that's happening in local markets. And we'll take examples and show you where to go in the data to see that. Is it also happening in your market that you see fewer listings per bookings, fewer bookings per listing in that order? Second thing, everyone was saying, well, it's because if you look at the data of Airbnb, and maybe actually has more demand, where demand is growing for Airbnb overall, right? But maybe one of the issues is that also the number of listings is increasing. And you know what? That's not going to stop, right? Airbnb clearly is pushing for more listings, for more hosts, and all kind of hosts, right? For example, right now in the US, they have this Airbnb It campaign running when they want, people with a guest house, people with a private room, any kind of occasional host to also list their room. Why? Because Airbnb wants to lower the price on the overall platform. Airbnb is sometimes seen nowadays as an expensive option for travel. So their goal is to get more supply to lower the prices, which of course is not necessarily what we want to happen. But again, that's overall, what does it mean in your local market? That's what you want to know, but keep this in mind. And last thing in terms of negatives, and last slide of mine before we go into the live data, is things that are uncertain as well, right? Starting with positive, let's end with some negative. Of course, we hear for example, in Europe, in the US, about threats of recessions. Are we going to get into it? Not into it? It's not super clear, but let's say that it's on people's mind, right? Something else on people's mind, also in their wallets, in Europe, for example, is the high cost of energy, right? So purchasing power may touch, travelers. We know that people still want to travel. It's a need. It's after 2 years of COVID, but maybe they will stay closer home. Maybe they will take shorter stays, right? So we'll see how it's going to play out. Maybe, if hotels are too expensive, they're going to go to short-term rentals. It can play both ways, but it's really something to have in mind. Another thing is conflicts. There's different conflicts and wars. How it's going to turn out, I'm not going to predict anything here. It's just too complicated. And last thing to have in mind is regulations. What's new here is that even in markets where authorities were friendly to vacation rentals, things are changing. For example, in the US, in a steamboat market, now there's a clear ban on new vacation rentals. So even traditional places that were positive towards our industry, may be turning negative. So if you're not part of your local community of short-term rental operators, please join to know what's going on, because that's clearly something that can impact, obviously, your market and your business. And again, as I say, it's not just for big cities anymore. It may be coming to you. So I hope it's not too frightening and you knew that. But help is on the way, and help is Richie. So Richie, I'll let you take it away.
Very cool. Yeah. Very, very cool. There are certain quick questions that maybe if you want to answer, because that's a little bit of your expertise. Philip's asking, do you expect supply to decrease because of Airbnb bust?
To supply to decrease?
Yeah.
It's a good question in the sense that supply would decrease overall for Airbnb. If you said, you know what, Airbnb, I'm not happy with you, I'm going to go elsewhere. One, what alternatives do we really have? Of course, there's Vrbo, there's Booking. Why not? But again, overall supply should actually increase given everything that Airbnb is doing, right, to get new listings, right? They are advertising very heavily. They're doing everything they can to increase the supply. What you could see though is that I would say actually we're linking to recession, inflation, also interest rates. What could be happening though is that some people who borrowed a lot of money to have 1, 2, 3 different short-term rentals may have some issues paying back and may have to sell or may just have to stop having their short-term rental because they just can't pay back the money. But again, that's something that may happen to some people, but I guess that overall, probably listings will, well, I mean, that's what we've seen in some predictions at least, but that's what Airbnb is hoping, that supply should be increasing.
Got it. And then there is, I think we've answered this, but what is revenge travel? You used one of those terms that some people are not familiar with. Thibault.
Sure. So revenge travel. So the idea is that you've been stuck at home for 2 years and you're like, you know what? Whatever happens this year, I'm going to see my family. I'm going to see my friends, or maybe you've been stuck too much with your family. I'm going to go away for a long time. So notion of revenge travel is notion of that people want to make up for the lost time because of lockdowns. And think about this. I was reading this morning, like people in China, for example, some people were in Hong Kong for 3 years and have not seen their family back in mainland China. I mean, you think about this, right? These people will want to travel, even though there's high COVID rates right now in China, they are going there because they want to see their families, right? Kind of makes sense. So the idea of revenge travel as well here is the notion that, and I've seen data as well, is that even if people are really, high energy costs, they have less money to spend, they're still keeping a budget for travel, which it is usually it's travel is the first thing to go down, right? You save on this. And not this time, apparently. So maybe it's the pandemic doing this. People still want to say, you know what, we're still going to travel this year. But that's my caveat here. If prices like average daily rates, so ADRs, your rates increase so high over the last 2 years, be careful not maybe to inflate too much this year, because people, again, may not be as easy for them to pay high prices. So that's the caveat here, I would say. Revenge travel, but maybe revenge economy travel. Let's see. Again, market by market.
Love it. There is a lot of questions around potential forecasting and what we think about the market. I'd recommend if we can take some of these a little later and maybe get into how do we discover what's happening in your local markets, on your properties, etc. Right? And then we can hopefully, if we have time remaining, we can come back to some of these questions, right? For example, I see questions like, hey, what's the future of Africa or Europe or America in reference? Like, what's the future of certain city like Chicago, or what's the future of certain places, right? It's hard to answer that specific question in a broad webinar, but our intent is to give you tools as a part of this webinar so that you can answer some of those questions on your own. Having said that, unfortunately, this is a packed webinar where we may not be able to take questions that are not directly related to the topic that we're talking about. But at any point of time, if you have questions about anything, please do reach out to our support team. We work Monday through Friday, all hours, and on weekends with limited support. We try to get to your questions as soon as possible. If you could quickly launch a poll around market dashboards as I'm talking about this. In PriceLabs, you'd see 4 key places that you can use to try to understand what's happening in your market and for your property. The number 1 place is if you're trying to understand broad market trends, what's happening in your area, in your region, whether you own a property or you don't own a property. It is via market dashboards, right? And guys, you'd see a poll pop up on your screen. If you can try to answer that poll, it'll give me a sense of whether how much the people know about market dashboards. And so accordingly, as we talk about market dashboards and get deeper into it a little while later, I'll be able to tailor it accordingly. Cool. I am, for some reason, seeing an ability to vote for the poll. Guys, if I'm not sure if you're already seeing it at the bottom of your screen, you'd have seen a poll thing pop up. And hopefully it's in the center and middle of your screen. If you can vote for it and let us know your familiarity with market dashboards. So market dashboards, general market trends, whether that's your city level or your block level or what's happening in this neighborhood or region, right? You can track up to 1,000. You can track 1,000 or up to 5,000 listings. That's kind of how we work today. And in due course, we'd also be expanding that to broader markets. Number 2, if you have a portfolio of properties, how do you look at how those properties are doing? One, relative to your prior years and also relative to the markets. That's where you're going to use market dashboards and portfolio analytics combination. If you're looking at individual property, and I saw the poll about neighborhood data a little while ago. If you're looking at individual property, we're going to look into neighborhood data, and there are new features that we have released today, and so we're going to talk about those. And finally, if you're quickly trying to gauge how your property is doing, we're going to look at performance metrics, right? So we have quite a bit of it packed here that we're going to cover. Do note that this is a little bit of an advanced market class, masterclass, and we're going to cover certain specific things purely related to these trends and how to find those trends. But if you are looking for training on PriceLabs, we do daily trainings on dynamic pricing, and dynamic pricing 101s and dynamic pricing 201 we do every once a week. Portfolio analytics, we run trainings once a month, and market dashboards, we run training once a month. We'll share a link with you as well, how to find those trainings, but you can also find all of these recordings on our YouTube channel. With that, is the poll on this thing done? Okay. Okay. So I know, like, I see not a lot of people are very familiar with market dashboards or don't use market dashboards. That's absolutely fine. We're going to start with market level data. You don't need to know market level data always. You may want to know your property level data or your individual property data, right? So we're going to dive into that as well. But if you are curious about market dashboards and how to use them, I think the most latest video on our YouTube channel is about market dashboards. So go check that out. It's a training class that we did, I want to say last week, on market dashboards and how to use them. Cool. With that, I need access to share my screen, Thibault. How do I do that? Okay. All righty. I am going to.
While Richie is prepping again for the what we're doing, in the sense that even if you wanted ideas, data for Africa and the rest, usually what you want is data in your African market, in your city, right? In your city in Europe. That's really what we're doing now. And we've picked two examples, right? I think we picked two examples of cities. But again, the way we do this right now, you can do it in every market depending on you, right? That's how I will answer globally the questions I've seen indeed about specific markets. What Richie is showing now is how you can do it in your own market. Take it away.
Cool. Very cool. Again, I'm not going to get into the basics of how to build a market dashboard, how to go about that, every single detail about market dashboard. Please do refer to our YouTube channel or subscribe to our next masterclass on what are market dashboards and how to use them. But let's working with the assumption that you've either used market dashboards before or knowing what market dashboards are, essentially a radius or an area where we track all the properties on Airbnb and VRBO and try to make sense of metrics in terms of what's happening in those markets, right? For this presentation, thanks to Thibault, we picked two areas. And as I was doing this, I also pulled out a few others, just I was trying to compare. But two areas that we're trying to go through is Chicago market and the Paris market, right? And we're going to look at that and try to understand what's happening here, right? Again, for basics, we look at data on Airbnb and VRBO as we are trying to build these dashboards. You'll see here at the top left, view comsets. I'm trying to see where it says ABB. It's basically Airbnb whole market. And then I could also see VRBO whole market, right? And so if I'm trying to understand what's happening on those OTAs, I can try to understand that via that. The data for this comes via, we scrape data from Airbnb and VRBO every single day. And then we try to make sense of what's happening, what kind of blocks exist, what kind of patterns exist. We've been doing this for the last 8 years, where we've been gathering data around various markets. And for the last 2.5 years, we've been gathering data absolutely every single place in the market, right? And then as we talk about this, I'm going to introduce certain terms that I'm also going to try to explain, but please do pardon my own ignorance because I sometimes may not know that it's a term that you're not familiar with. And if you're not, we'll catch up on that, right? Cool. One of the things that I wanted to quickly show you, like what Thibault had mentioned, supplies is increasing in certain markets, etc. Right? So, for example, we have a Chicago market dashboard here, which is around Logan Square, and we're only tracking 2 kilometers of Logan Square area. If I scroll down and if I go to a supply and demand, normally in your market dashboard, it'll be hidden like this. If you click show graphs, you can see what's happening in that 2 kilometer radius of supply over the last 15 months or so. So you'd see, hey, the supply used to be 900 properties, and now it's jumped to about 1,000 properties. So a good 12% increase in supply. In a very similar way, if I look at Paris, I'd see a supply increase from 4,300 odd. It went down and has this systemic peaks to now 5,000. That's about 15% increase. And then the reason why I pulled some of these other dashboards is because, oh, I thought I had a Dubai dashboard open here. Yeah. So if I show you Dubai, which has this crazy supply increase, where it went from 2,000 properties to 5,000 properties over a period of 15 months, right? Just extremely lucrative market, and some of the things that the government there is doing to attract, right? Again, these dashboards, these active listings can look very, very different based on what market you're in. Our goal is to show you, hey, if you're trying to understand what's happening in terms of supply in your market, you'll watch our webinar on market dashboards, create a market dashboard, and you'll be able to see what's happening in terms of active listings. Are they dramatically increasing, not increasing? So that when you think about, has my occupancy dropped, or has my occupancy stayed same, or has my occupancy increased, you also a little bit understand how is that getting impacted from the active listings in the market. Number two, it is the thing that you also want to look at is this sense of demand. And I'll actually go back to one of the other dashboards that I had here, right? So if I look at, for example, Chicago as a demand, right? Here, what this is every week, how many bookings are coming in per listing, right? Not for stay, but bookings coming in, right? Bookings created. So if you see last Jan, there was 0.62 bookings coming or in the week of Jan 10th, or maybe I'll go a week before that, week of Jan 3 to Jan 9th, 0.52 bookings per listing, right? And note that listings haven't dramatically increased, but this time around it's 0.76, and that's kind of the point that Thibault was trying to make. Although this is a very pointed data, but potentially we may expect some demand to come back in these cities over time, right? And then as we go through, you're going to see some of this, right? So there's this whole conversation around Airbnb bust and has the bookings decreased, right? But if we look at, there's not a lot of change in occupancy here, right? There is this decrease in average bookings, but that's seasonality. If I compare, for example, my October, November, December to my October, November, December here in 2021, not a material change, actually in some cases higher than last year or higher than 2021. And that's an indicator for you to saying, is my market getting affected by that Airbnb bust? Where people really start thinking about a little bit Airbnb bust is maybe in certain markets, and I'm wondering if I have any market like that here, maybe Honolulu, where you'd see some of this, but really we're not seeing in terms of occupancies, like for example, in Honolulu as well, right? We're not seeing any of those occupancies drop. I have Andalusia here, and let me quickly pull up. Let's see what Andalusia looks like. Same. average bookings not particularly dropping while you see these supplies really, really high, right? At an individual level, some users might experience this, but at an Airbnb level, it's not particularly a material change that we're seeing. But again, it may depend very, very heavily on your market, and so you do want to look at your market, right? Cool. In terms of supply and whether the supply has crazily increased or not, do note that we're seeing 15 months of data here. It is entirely possible in some of these markets that in 2020 and early 2021, a lot of supply went offline, went to those long-term stays kind of stuff. And now it's only starting to come back up. But we do see a steady increase in a lot of markets. Your market may look different. And so that's what you're trying to see here and show here, right? Then one of the things that you want to look at is to go down and look at these occupancy graphs. And these occupancy graphs, typically when you'd be in this, it look like this because it only shows you occupancy for future days, but you can scroll this back and you'd see what in your market typical occupancies have looked like, right? I'll show this to you now on Paris kind of a graph where in Paris, if I scroll back, you can see what the occupancies had looked like. And I'll now zoom into a specific period here of October of 2023. And you'd start seeing some of these peaks come up. And Thibault, as a European, do you want to explain what these peaks are for? As a French person, hopefully you're very excited about these peaks.
Sure. For some reason, my screen has gotten smaller, but I'm pretty sure you're showing September to October right now, probably, or zooming in. So the idea is like if we zoom in September, October, you can see really these strange bumps, right? And kind of regular, right? It's kind of every 7 or every 2 weeks. Basically, what you can see already now in January, you can see for September, October, the dates where the games, the matches for the Rugby World Cup is happening in France. So it's happening in France in several places, but among which, of course, Paris, where the bigger games will be. And that's why you really see these bumps already. So what's very interesting, I don't want to go into it now, but I can even tell you that the highest bumps is when New Zealand is playing in Paris. Not surprisingly, right? So basically, when we played a game around this, we could even basically see which nation was playing. Just to say again, obviously, I had no clue it was coming. Yes, I'm excited now that I know, but I have no clue. I did see a game 20 years ago when the World Cup was in Paris. But that's just to show you, what, looking at the trends, I was like this, what's happening in Paris? And that's something you should also look at, right? If you don't know why there are some bumps, well, you should be worried, like in what's happening. One, number two, and are my prices adapting to this? And it's a question basically also, Richie, people have in a Q&A, they say, but if market dashboard sees that there's like a peak in demand, isn't PriceLabs automatically increasing my prices? Well, how does it work?
Absolutely. PriceLabs is automatically increasing those prices if we're seeing a peak in demand, right? But this is only to show you, like, if you're trying to understand occupancy, some of these peaks, for example, this is Chicago Marathon happens in October, and you'd see these peaks in, for example, Chicago, right? Already 12% occupied for October 2023. I would imagine some of these people have potentially left some money on the table. But you can also go back and see, hey, how does market occupancies look like 15 months ago, right? And so I can scroll back and see what do occupancies look like. The whole intent of this being, do remember, if you're using PriceLabs, you can use a portfolio analytics and our neighborhood data to make very good sense. But if you're trying to zoom out and trying to understand the trends of your area or your market, or you're trying to invest in a new market and you're trying to understand trends there, that's when you can really look into these market dashboards and try to understand, one, what's happening in terms of supply. Is supply dramatically increasing? Is there like in terms of number of bookings that are coming in, is that dramatically changing? And then also like in terms of occupancies, looking at historical to saying like in the recent past, for example, December 31st had, or Jan 1st, December 31st had a 57% occupancy in 2022 versus in 2021 it was about 60, so not something like that. So not materially different in terms of those patterns, right? Slightly lower, but not materially different. So that's helpful for you to look at as you're trying to understand markets. That's at again a broad-based level if you're trying to understand market dashboards, right? Next, I want to dive into. Oh, by the way, I forgot to mention this because the data science team and engineering team asked me to say this at the start of the webinar. I'm going to show you certain things, but do note that we're not set up to have, we have a little over 300 odd people on this webinar. We're not set up to have 300 people click PriceLabs or certain buttons at the same time. So try to grasp it in. Don't try to follow me along to the T. If we do, sometimes like for everyone, the product would slow down, right? Cool. Next, I want to, Thibault, anything else on market dashboards or any questions on market dashboards that you want me to cover before we spend some time on portfolio analytics and then some time on neighborhood dashboards?
Just looking at the question, give some context. So we were market dashboard, which is separate product indeed you can purchase. And that's a question of you pay per report. That's the question. And now we're switching over to the, I would say, the regular dynamic pricing of PriceLabs, just for context. Thanks.
Cool. Yeah. So next we're switching on to portfolio analytics. I have a backend view here, but essentially, if you're using PriceLabs, in the top black bar, you'd see dynamic pricing, portfolio analytics, and market dashboards. Portfolio analytics is a free to use tool. So as long as you connect PriceLabs to your Airbnb or your PMS, you'll be able to use portfolio analytics. And I'm going to dive into a portfolio analytics here, but essentially what portfolio analytics is it's a way for me to see my booking data summarized in various KPIs, charts, and graphs. Not going to go through everything here. I'm hoping again you can attend one of our masterclasses on portfolio analytics or go into a YouTube channel. Either our first or second video, most recently updated, was about portfolio analytics. You can see your own occupancy trends here very quickly to saying, hey, how was my occupancy doing in 2021 versus how is my occupancy doing in 2023? Note that for future months, you'll still pick up relative because all of these months are really far out. But you may want to say, hey, what's happening in terms of my January month, where my January month is relatively lower occupied, right? So that's kind of how you can try to make sense of what's happening on your property. But you may also want to compare against the market, right? And so we're going to get into that.
So Richie, quick question here. So basically, we're saying it's a free tool. I can basically import I can connect to Airbnb, Vrbo, or my PMS and import my listings and my bookings. And here, what you just saw, that was the graphs that PriceLabs analyzes based on my actual data, right? That's what we were saying.
Exactly.
Nice.
This is actual data. Every day it comes in. Every day we update and add to these graphs, right? Based on your own actual data. Again, there's a lot of wealth of information in portfolio analytics that I'm not going to get into. But what I do want to get into is a graph here or a section here that's called pacing. Pacing essentially refers to how are you doing this year, or how are you doing today compared to same time last year, right? So for example, if to help you make sense of what I just said, for example, I'm looking at, and this is probably very zoomed in because it's my, one second. Yeah. So for example, I'm looking at my occupancy for Feb 1. And again, I'm looking at my portfolio's occupancy for Feb 1. And what I can see is the solid line is, as of today, I am 13.5% occupied. And I don't know how clear it is, so maybe I'll just zoom in and say, hey, Feb 1. Okay, on Feb 1, I am 13.5% occupied as of today. And same time last year, so same time last year, by that I mean on Jan 10th, 2022, how occupied was I for the same date. For the same date, I was 28 percent occupied, and today I am only 13.5% occupied, my own properties. So I am pacing behind on the market, or I'm pacing behind in terms of my last year, right? And so this is a very sorry, I've zoomed in far too much, but this is a very important thing for you to try to understand how your properties are doing. And let me zoom back in here. Yeah, it is very important for you to try to understand how your property is pacing relative to market, because if it's pacing far too slower, you know that you may not be able to hit the same revenues, and you may want to do something dramatically, right? PriceLabs, of course, adjusts, right? But do note that we adjust relative to the base price that you set, and sometimes you may need to look into that base price itself, right?
And Richie, going back to some questions here. So when we run market dashboards, we could look at the trends that we were recording from the overall data from Airbnb and Vrbo. And here, obviously, as we said, it's my bookings we're looking at, and that could be any bookings I have, right, from Booking.com or even direct, right?
Depends on what you connect, right? So if you've just connected PriceLabs to Airbnb, I of course won't be able to capture your Booking.com or VRBO or direct bookings, right? If you've connected us to your PMS, then we get all of your reservation data, and then that's what we'd see, right? It depends on what system you connect PriceLabs to, right? Yes. But this is useful information, because for same time last year, how occupied were you for in the future, right? And in a similar way, there's a little bit of complication that we can add around here in terms of pickup. Let me see if I add this here, and let me zoom in here. So again, one additional word that I've introduced to you: pacing. Same time last year, how you were doing, right? Pickup refers to in the last 7 days how much of your occupancies come up, right? So for example, on this date, say Jan 14th, I am today 49% occupied. Same time last year, I was occupied 66%. And then in the last 7 days of that 49% occupancy, 12.5% occupancy has come in the last 7 days itself, right? So it seems like there is a good, at least there's a decent enough demand for last minute pickup here. The way you'd also see it, unfortunately, I don't have in my data set here, but you might sometimes see for a far out date, like a pickup really increasing, and then you want to be careful about why like if you manage a large portfolio, why is my pickup for a certain date really increasing? In a very similar pattern, you can start seeing ADRs for your properties. Solid line, your ADR for current year, and dotted line, your ADR for last year today. ADR refers to your booked rates, right? It does not refer to your prices for properties that are not booked. It refers to your book rates. And so you can see, hey, how are my ADRs doing compared to last year, right? And then finally, RevPAR, slightly more complex metric. Will not dive into it. If you're looking at occupancy and ADRs, those are very good ways for you to figure out how is my property doing. Sometimes we might feel uncomfortable. Hey, I'm not seeing any bookings, right? But you may want to see how was last year compared to this year, and is it higher or lower, right? One caveat: if you're new to PriceLabs, and if you think you were underpriced with pricing previously, with PriceLabs, we might pace relatively behind your last year's booking. This is called a booking curve, by the way. We might pace slightly behind your last year's occupancies because we are pricing slightly higher than potentially what you were pricing last year, right? And then secondly, if you were pricing a lot higher compared to this year, and if your market's not really impacted by supply and demand, you'll see yourself pace a little bit higher, right? If you're pacing far enough higher than your last year, you may want to consider increasing your prices, for example, right? Now, this is all your internal data. We can add a complication here. If we wanted to understand this data with market data, you can click this pink section, select any market dashboard. Again, this is where the paid part of it becomes, right? I could select a market dashboard. I can select potentially even a comp set that's similar to my listings. Comp sets, again, go refer to our masterclass on market dashboards, where we talk about how we create comp sets on market dashboards. But you could see that and you could click apply, and what you'd see is also data from that market dashboard pop up. So for example, how my listings, again, this is a portfolio of listings in my account. I have, I don't remember now, but like 500, 600 properties. This is an aggregate of my price, and this is aggregate of how my price compares to the market. This has now become a hodgepodge of things, but let me drill down. But essentially what it's trying to say, and by the way, if I click on any of these legends, all of these lines will start to go away. What I can now start to look at is, hey, what is my occupancy relative to market occupancy? So I know, hey, on this dates, market is really occupied. I want to understand why I'm still not occupied, and maybe it's a high demand day and I want to increase prices. I can also look at last year's occupancy. Last year, relatively, my properties were more occupied, and I'm occupied less this year. Let's also look at market's occupancy last year compared to today. Market, this dotted line, gray line, is lesser than or similar. So then there's something happening with my portfolio which is not getting as much occupancy, right? So then I want to figure out and try to solve for it. Feel free to reach out if you see these scenarios. Feel free to reach out and ask our team to help as well, right? This is if you're trying to understand at your all portfolio level. I'm very excited to say now you can actually do all of this at a individual listing level. If you're using PriceLabs already, you can see pricing dashboard, and you'll see all of your properties. And if you click on any property, the calendar will pop up, and on the right hand side to the calendar is the
Richie, before we dive, just for context, because I see we've been through several tools, there's questions. So first we started out with market dashboards, then we went into portfolio analytics that was at the top, and then we switching to something else, right? To be clear, because I got questions, where are we? Are we in market dashboards? So what we've just seen was not in market dashboards. It was in a different tool called portfolio analytics, which is free for you to use. Just connect your data. We have it. And now we're switching to something else, Richie.
Absolutely. Yeah. So 3 tools, again, at the top of your black screen, you can see 3 tools: market dashboards, dynamic pricing, portfolio analytics. We first dived into market dashboards, broader market data set. Portfolio analytics, if you have 5, 10, 15, 20, 100 properties you want to understand at an overall level, or like if you use groups and PriceLabs, you want to understand at group levels, right? Portfolio analytics is very, very powerful, and you can look at all of that pacing information. Now, if you're managing 1, 2, 5 or properties, or very unique properties, you may want to look at some of this at an individual listing level. And this is where neighborhood data comes in. Neighborhood data is we pull 300, 350 listings closest to your property. You may want to further segment that down by clicking this, use our nearby listings that we automatically create, and selecting what bedroom size do you want to look at. And then again, not going to describe neighborhood data in detail. We talk about this in 101 webinar, but if you go to, say, for example, I'm just going to narrow this down to 60 days. This is a new thing that we have introduced. So far, what you could see in PriceLabs was, hey, what does the market occupancy look like, right? The graph looked a little bit different. It looked like a gray colored, a gray colored graph, I want to say. But now you'd see this as a line. Every day, what does the market occupancy look like? What you could now also do is add last year data, and you'd see 2 lines pop up on last year data. One, you'd see the gray line, which is, as of today, how occupied was the market last year. Again, when I say today, it's like same time last today, right? So for Feb 10th for Feb 10th there's a typo there. On Feb 10th, how occupied was the market as of Jan 10th and Jan 10, 2023. for Feb 10th, 2023, we are 50% occupied. But same time last year, which is 2022, how occupied were we on Jan 2022, right? So the market was about 28% occupied. But what we also see here is now a final occupancy for the last year, which is the dotted line, which is the market at the end of that, when the Feb 10th finally arrived, market was 69% occupied. One additional detail that you can also see here is what is the market pickup looking like. And I'm going to remove this, which is to saying, hey, if you see markets 53% occupied and 53% occupied on this date, but of that, just like 20%, which is a very strong pickup, has come in just in the last 7 days. So I may want to look at and make like PriceLabs will automatically starting raising prices, but this gives you a sense of why my prices are the way they are. And sometimes you may want to tweak by saying, hey, I'm too far ahead or too far behind, right? Related to the market. What do I mean by market? If you click this location and show map, you'll be able to see what are the other listings that we are tracking. So in this case, I'm looking at New Orleans and I wonder, oh, I was looking at Valentine's Day weekend, but yeah, you can see in New Orleans how the market is behaving, both in terms of occupancy and in terms of pickup and in terms of how the last year was doing and how are we pacing against that, right? So this will help you better inform if you should at some places be tweaking prices, right? Sometimes we feel like, hey, for example, for July 4th, I should already be booked up, right? But what you can start seeing is, hey, maybe we're pacing behind, right? July 4th, or maybe this year on Feb 12th, PriceLabs' prices would be potentially dramatically higher because we're pacing so far ahead for New Orleans, because last year, same time on this date, we were only 25% occupied, but we are 53% occupied. Granted, the final occupancy was 69%, but we still have days to go, and so we'll be pricing that day higher today.
Richie, on this neighborhood data, a lot of questions. We were super interested by what you're showing, and just some details about what you showed already. So first question is like the data we see in neighborhood data, is it only Airbnb, Vrbo? So where is it from? And
this is from
second, Go ahead.
No, go on. Second.
And second question is, I think at some point you said how many listings were shown here, and the question is how many listings are we looking at? So like how many are being considered, basically?
Yeah. So if you're if you've like normally our data source that we use is Airbnb. If you're in a VRBO heavy market, you can reach out to our team and ask us to switch your data set to VRBO. But normally we look at Airbnb as the data set in most markets. In some markets, we proactively also look at VRBO as a data set if that's a prominent OTA. Do note that no matter most of you guys will be familiar with this, right? You sync your bookings or calendar across OTAs. You sync, if you're using a PMS, it's anyways automatically synced, or you're using iCal, or you're manually blocking your calendars, right? So when we look at occupancies, what we get from these OTAs is final occupancy, because it already takes into account whether the booking is coming on Airbnb or some other channel. We're starting to look at final occupancies from that sense, right? So that's where this data is coming from. Number two, this market dashboard, neighborhood data will contain 300 to 350 properties. That is if I had all of this at 100% in nearby listings. So if I scroll down here, you'd see an overview table, and that overview table would describe this all 350 and what is the composition of that 350, because we want to look at a mixed set of data. But if you just wanted to look at, and which makes sense when you're trying to benchmark, say mine's a 2-bedroom and I just want to look at 2 bedrooms, you can also, of course, like you'll filter down and you see, hey, I'm looking at 98 listings data. And in this graph, you can also, map, you can see where are those 98 listings. If I click on any of that listing, the Airbnb, the Airbnb link for that property will open up. So if I click on any of these dots, that will open up. But this is a great way for you to try to understand how are your in your particular neighborhood itself, right? Without paying for market dashboards or anything. How is the occupancy doing relative to one same time last year and at full occupancy for the last year, right? Like when the date had reached what the data was saying. So hopefully that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, we have 2 minutes left. How do you want to spend it?
I want to one final thing that I just quickly want to say. Mine's a dummy data, but you'd also see these performance metrics, which you can quickly use. If it's in red color, that means you're pacing behind the market. Mine's dummy data, so I have 0 bookings, which is why it's pacing all in red, right? But in your data set, you can see how are you doing relative to the market. Are you more occupied, less occupied? If it's in red, that means you're less occupied than the market. If it's yellow, you're slightly under the market. If it's in green, then you're over the market, and if it's blue, you're very over the market. This is the number of like the booking window. So next 7 days, next 30 days, next 90 days. If you click these 3 dots, you can change this. And normally I like to see these in blues, this in greens or yellows, and then this in reds, because I don't want to personally book too far in advance. But if you want to book too far in advance, you want to change that. We are at time. I see there are a ton of questions, and I know we've tried to cover a bunch here.
We've covered a bunch. We've answered some in writing. But if you don't mind, I would just love to go back to the one slide you created. That's how you're recapping everything we've seen today, because I think it's really, because people say, oh, if I have one property, what do I look at? And I think your slide was really capturing this. So I'm going to share it again, so you can just recap this. I would just start by saying again, the goal for us today was really to talk about big trends, and you have this, and you're going to get the recording, and we're still going to send you the slides, right? So you have the slides where the trends are. And the goal was for us to say, these are the trends you may hear about or you should know about. And hopefully, thanks to Richie, now you kind of know by leveraging PriceLabs how you can see whether it's also happening in your market and for your listings. So Richie, again, to summarize that, how would you use with the slides, right? How do you, what you've just seen?
Yeah. So I know we tried to cover a bunch here, right? But again, I would summarize this. One, if you're using PriceLabs and dynamic pricing, we are automatically tweaking this as we understand what's happening in the market, right? Sometimes you may want to get ahead in the market, and sometimes your operational or risk philosophies might change, right? The way I think about dynamic pricing is you're essentially trying to make money, and it's no different than sometimes you're trying to invest, right? Sometimes you're trying to invest in CDs, sometimes you're trying to invest in mutual funds, sometimes you're trying to invest in cryptos, right? And as PriceLabs, we don't necessarily understand that, right? So sometimes you may want to say, hey, my view of 2023 is conservative, and so I want to underprice. And one of the quick ways to do that is think about how do I adjust my base pricing to be on the relatively lower end of the market, right? Or I'm fairly bullish on 2023 and markets are still not pricing it right. I may want to increase my ADRs, but a good way for you to understand what's happening in the market is whether at market dashboards, try to understand occupancies, try to understand supply, whether at portfolio analytics level, see how you're pacing related to the market. And also in terms of neighborhood data, see how the market is doing, or in your neighborhood around for occupancies in the market, right? Both same time last year and at full occupancy. I know we're over time, Thibault, but I think it's okay for us to spend 10 more minutes and try to answer the Q&A, if that's okay.
Exactly. Let's do that.
Yeah.
Do you want me to read questions for you and you take them away?
Yeah. And I can also keep going.
Oh, no, you can keep going.
No, I can also look through it, but yeah. We can do that.
So there's a lot of questions, basically people saying, so maybe I'm a PriceLabs user, and for example, I don't see portfolio analytics as a tab, or the data I have is not, I'm not sure. I just connected a month ago with PriceLabs. It's going to see like 12 months of data. I think the best answer is to ask a support team, right, for these kind of questions, like very specific. Yeah. What's the best approach?
If it's a very specific question, yes, feel free to reach out to our support team. But I would really, really request, right? please do. We spend a lot of time going through and building through these trainings, right? Please do go through our 101s, 201s, market dashboard trainings and portfolio analytics trainings, so that you are up to speed on how PriceLabs works, and it just helps us also scale effectively.
So it's pricelabs.co/trainings, I think. And the trainings are, as you said, some are at least weekly and some are even, and we do this in several languages as well sometimes, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Absolutely.
It's available at least in several languages. And the other question, whether the tool will be in several languages, you have something to say about this? Is PriceLabs going to be available in different languages?
Yeah. We're working on releases on that end. We'll have PriceLabs in Spanish coming out very soon, and we're working on Portuguese, French, and Italian. So in the next couple of months, you'd see PriceLabs available in various languages.
Okay. Going back to neighborhood data, can we edit the location listings that are chosen neighborhood? Can we pick them basically and choose them?
So you can't really choose listings, but let me quickly tell you two things, right? One, this black dot that you'd see, that's where whatever system you're connected, whether Airbnb or whether your PMS, that's telling us where your property is located. And based on that, we try to gather 300 to 350 nearby listings, right? Now, if this is wrong, go change it in your PMS or Airbnb, and then come up here, click add reconnect. That will give us the new listing, new location data. If this location data is wrong, it is like you do want this location data to be right, and there is no way to override this in PriceLabs. We do get that from your PMS or from your Airbnb account, right? Now, if you did want to look at some of this in a very custom way, again, you could build a market dashboard. Click this drop down, look at a market dashboard, and then look at that market dashboard's very specific comp set as well. And you'd see all of this data very specific to whatever you want it to do, right? We automatically choose that nearby listing. You can't change that. That location comes from your PMS or Airbnb or VRBO. If you want to change that, change it there. But if you want to create like an absolutely different comp set, right? Because maybe I'm in Logan's, maybe I'm somewhere in Chicago and I want to compare some completely different area, that the way to do that will be via market dashboards.
Another question here is about the data we looked at. I know we looked at past performance, and then we looked into the future as data we already have. So once again, what is it? So we have several questions like, is data based on confirmed stays or booked data? Another related question is it, how fresh is the data? How recent is it?
The data, we update this data set every day or second day, depending on what kind of a market are we in, right? But at a minimum, every 2 days, the data gets refreshed, right?
Confirmed stays and book data. What are we looking at?
Confirmed stays and book data, right? So we're looking at availabilities on Airbnb, right? So if something goes unavailable, right? That is generally a confirmed stay, right? A reality of so we're looking at book data rather than confirmed stays, I guess is.
So yeah. I'm guessing past performance is whatever was actually booked and happened, obviously.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. Yep.
Clear. Super clear. Somebody's asking, can we use PriceLabs to generate a report to be given to potential clients to show suggested revenue? And I think it's one actually of the use cases of our tools, right? How to do
absolutely. And again, it'll take a bunch of time, but you can, if you attend market dashboards training, this is one of the use cases that we go through. And yeah, I mean, it's available on demand as well. By the way, like if you click here in the down here, and if you go to trainings, if you go to say click 201, I'm not sure. Yeah, you'll see, and I'll do this again because I was trying to play with this live. But if you click this hat thing, if you go to trainings, if you go to either 101 or 201, you'll see all of the trainings that we run, right? 101 every day. What do we talk about? 201, what do we talk about? Market dashboards.
If you're not client, again, you have access to it as well, right? PriceLabs.co/training, free trainings, people.
Yeah.
And we talk about this PDFs again. So I guess market dashboard, indeed, right? I can get a PDF that I can hand over maybe to a client with some metrics over the year, for example, right?
You can scroll down. You'll see an option of generate PDF. You'll see the same in portfolio analytics as well. And then this is also something new, but you can go into settings and you can actually even, where is it? Oh, you can update your brand logo if you're a property management company, and so those will also show up on those reports.
That's pretty impressive to show to an owner. Speaking of trainings, when it comes to neighborhood data, where can I find some training about it?
We cover neighborhood data in quite a bit detail in the 101 training section, 101 training. So PriceLabs 101, click this thing, go to training, click PriceLabs 101. You can also just, if you prefer to read, if you click this and search for neighborhood data here, can't type neighborhood data, you'd see, for example, listing neighborhood data come up, and we go into quite a bit detail about what exactly is everything on this page about neighborhood data.
Quick question about our services, in the sense that I think we have, as you said, we have a support team, and you mentioned how it's available all weekdays and limited support weekends. We also have account managers. How does that work? Account managers, who has an account manager, question about this. Who is assigned an account manager?
Typically, if you have more than 50 properties, that's when we have account managers assigned.
Okay.
It's just extremely expensive to work on one-on-one methods.
Yeah, but it may happen also when you send a ticket that the account manager does answer, right? So this level of knowledge is available to anyone, but you are assigned someone if you're a bigger account, clearly.
100%, right? Depending on the scale of the account, it makes sense for us to have someone dedicated, but every single person in PriceLabs is vetted very, very carefully and trained very, very carefully. And so they I have no doubts that they have skill sets to be able to answer questions.
And shout out to Anik Raw, who says that support team is really great, and time to say thank you. So thank you, Anik, and we'll share it with the support team. Then we have more questions about people saying that they have an issue with the way they're using the product or some product. Again, the best way is indeed to contact the support team to really be able to get into your own settings. How will I get the recording? We're going to send you an email, and with the email, you're going to get a link to the recording. So I'm not promising today or tonight, but probably tomorrow, the day after latest. Somebody did a question. I think we're almost good. I think we're good, actually. I think we're good for most of the questions, Richie.
Okay, very cool. If there are any questions that we have not been able to get to, we are going to look through these questions again and try to answer them one-on-one as well, right? But again, like Thibault said, if there were questions that we weren't able to get to, please do feel free to reach out to our support team. We'll happily reply back to you. For some oddity, I do want to acknowledge this on the call as well, but in the last 5 or 6 days, we have seen a major spike on support, and so we are running a little bit behind on our responses, right? Maybe everyone's come back after New Year's and really digging into their PriceLabs accounts, right? But we are seeing a massive spike on our support, and so right now we're running a little bit behind in being able to answer your queries.
Cool. Well, thanks for being transparent. That's really nice.
It's dynamic pricing, right? Unfortunately, hopefully that maybe tells some people to tailor their questions or maybe ask them a little later if it's not important enough, right?
Cool. Well, thanks everyone for attending. Let me just check. There's still 173 people attending, 15 minutes past the time. So good job, everyone. Thanks for attending again. The recording will be shared with you through an email. Most probably is going to be a quick recap on Rental Scale Up as an article as usual when you do events. All right. Thanks for attending. Thanks, Richie, for co-hosting. Anything we need to add?
No, thank you so much, everyone. Really appreciate the love and support. Again, we try to keep PriceLabs cost as low as possible, try to provide these trainings as much as possible, right? If you know anyone else who you think can benefit from PriceLabs, please do share about PriceLabs so that hopefully we can continue to do this more and more.
All right. Share the love, and to everyone, have a great 2023 year.
Thank you so much. Take care. Bye-bye.
Yeah.